All right, what is up, guys? I have not fixed the Keurig yet. I ended up getting, I wouldn't even say lazy, mostly distracted, but we need to do this coffee anyways, so it works out. The German roasted dark, low acidity. This one is, we finished the other one basically. There's like just a tiny bit left in here. Um, A naturally low acidity coffee grown in Brazil, dark roasted for a robust, full bodied cup. And as you can see, the slider shows this is as dark as possible. And it is robust and creamy, which is exactly how your mom likes it. So I might need a knife to open this. I didn't think to grab that beforehand. I think I cut it open with scissors last time, but I was looking before I started the video and I didn't see the scissors and I forgot to grab a knife or something before I started. One sec. All right. So as we did the previous time, I've almost gone through the shit coffee too, because I was doing 2 scoops of the good coffee and 3 scoops of the shit coffee. But oh, that sound! I don't know if you could hear that, but the vacuum seal getting punctured. I'm so looking forward to sticking my nose in this. Oh. Yeah, that smells way darker than the other stuff. It looks way darker. It's like a very dark looking coffee. All right. It's pretty fine too. Almost like an espresso, but not quite. Now, where's the coffee scoop? We're going to use this coffee scooper because this is the one from the other German coffee. So it'll have the least flavor. German roasted coffee. It's Brazilian coffee or whatever it said. Yeah, Brazil, but it's German roasted from Aldi's. Was this Barismo brand or is this a different brand? Yeah, this is Barismo brand. All the Barismo stuff is amazing, but that Beaumont coffee, kind of trash. I don't know if I think that's also in-house brand. Okay, that's way more than 1 scoop. We're gonna call that 1.5. It's just the top scoop. It's kind of hard to level it out without sending coffee grounds everywhere. That's 2. We'll say that's 3, 4, and then I'm going to do a little half scoop. All right, so let's get that rocking. Now, while that's going, we're going to dump this into this bucket. Oh, it's not plugged in because I had it unplugged. I made another Keurig cup today so I could refresh the Keurig and track down where it was leaking. We're gonna look at that after I'm done with this video, among other things. But yeah, so what I want to talk about today is kings and queens. Recently, there's been this whole hashtag no kings thing on social media. And I find it ironic that most of the people that are using that hashtag, at least as far as I've seen, are the very same people that call themselves a king or a queen, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means they're fucking lying to you, because I do have a coffee mug up here. Cool. We gotta wait a minute for that to brew. It means they're fucking lying to you, because clearly they do want kings and queens. They just want to be the one in charge. But here's the thing. I'm gonna put the knife away. They aren't capable of being in charge, right? And I'm not saying all of them, right? Don't get me wrong. There's some people out there that definitely manage to get their lives put together pretty well, and I would argue would make decent leaders. But most of these people, that's the big problem with the world today, right? Is a crisis of leadership. And I feel like that whole no kings mentality epitomizes everything wrong with the world. And don't get me wrong, I get the idea. It's what they really mean is no tyrants, right? Well, some of them that and used in the most positive and constructive definition. With that nuance, what they really mean when they say no kings is no tyrants, right? But what a lot of them mean is no king but me. And it's a whole kind of selfish and self-destructive individualism. And don't get me wrong, I love individuality. I'm one of the most individualistic persons you will ever meet. I kind of wish I still had my hair the way it was this morning. I love doing the videos when my hair is just absolutely insanely wild. At first, I didn't give I cared too much about that. Now I don't give a fuck. And sometimes I'll intentionally be like, yo, my hair is looking right today. Let's make this video before we brush it type thing. But I very much have insane space wizard hermit living in the mountains type vibes, where I can honestly be perfectly fine with not seeing another soul for months or even years. Although I've never actually gone years, I realize that while that would drive most people insane, I would absolutely love it. Probably because I think I was born insane, you know? So it's one of those things where I love my peace and quiet. I love when people just leave me alone and don't tell me what to do, don't try to control my life remotely for their own gain. And in that respect, I can absolutely relate to the whole no kings thing, right? But the problem is we live in a community. And as much as everyone, even someone like myself, wants to think we can do everything on our own, we can't. And there's two primary reasons for that. One is because many things require a certain level of expertise. And there are many things that, especially in the modern world, a person needs that require a high level of expertise. But there's simply not enough time to become an expert in all those things. So we need to rely on other skilled persons in order to have some semblance of a calm and organized and successful life. Now, it's done brewing, so let's take a moment and catch up with this. Oh yeah, that's dark. This is like, it almost tastes like espresso. It's that dark. Ooh. I'm gonna throw a little cream in this to start. I don't really have much sugar right now. I was using brown sugar. I suppose I could use the brown sugar. I've started using brown sugar in the coffee and I kind of like it. Dude, it's so dark it barely changes. I put a lot of cream in there. And it's like tan. It's not actually, it barely changed the color. Oh, that's really good. Maybe we'll just roll with it like this. I might put sugar in the second cup, but for now we're just gonna stick with it like this. Let's go chill on the porch and have the discussion out here. So the first thing is there's simply not enough time to do everything you need to become an expert or even a journeyman, which if you're not aware is generally like uh, a mid-high level of expertise. There's like apprentice, beginner, journeyman, expert, generally type route. Um, there's just simply not enough time to become an expert and all that stuff. I want to build a multi-streaming software and a cryptocurrency, and I need a programming expert for those. And specifically, I probably need two different types of programming experts at least. On top of that, I'm going to need a graphic design expert and a legal expert, definitely for the cryptocurrency, as well as a financial expert. So even just those two projects, that's four experts already, and I'm only one man, right? Becoming an expert takes approximately 10,000 hours of experience in something. Well, let's look at where my expertise lies. One is philosophy. I've spent more time discussing philosophy and all of this and thinking about it than the vast majority of people have. But as far as something more tangible, you could argue that I'm definitely an expert in music, as far as I don't really put anything out there yet, but I've been singing in choirs since I was in second grade. I've done all the high school choirs. I did choirs in, oh, there's Charlie. I've done choirs in, what's up, Kitty? Yeah, go inside and eat, all right? Your food's inside waiting for you. I've done choirs in college, and then after college, I still did barbershop choir stuff. He's gonna beg for attention right now, but I want to finish this video first. Last few times I let him do that, I just got distracted. I want to stay on my train of thought right now. So you need, I would also argue that I'm an expert in firearms, but there are levels of expertise. We're talking like prestige levels, basically, right? I am a certified pistol instructor, but I'm also not going to claim to be on an expert level of someone like John Level, who was, I think I don't want to misstate his credentials, but Warrior Poet Society dude on YouTube, Armed Forces veteran, has combat experience, definitely knows way more about using firearms tactically than I ever will, right? There's also gunsmiths. I would say at best, I wouldn't even call myself a gunsmith. I've done basic things like replace the sights on my firearms and little things like that, but I've never gone to gunsmithing school or machined parts from raw metal or anything like that. So definitely not uh, an expert gunsmith, but just in general on firearms, the use of firearms in society. I'm an expert in firearms self defense, but at the very lowest level, right? So I am very much a jack of all trades type where I can do just about everything if I put my mind to it, at least to a journeyman level in a relatively quick amount of time. I've learned that I learn much faster than most people for whatever reason. I can learn to do just about anything within about 2 weeks. And within about 2 months, I can be one of the best in that field. Like, I'll never, after 2 months, I'm not going to compare to a 10-year expert. But I've also found that because of my wide ranges of experiences and uh, ability to apply skills across different disciplines and open mindedness, that I would say after about 2 months, I'm better than what I would call fake experts. Because we talked about 10,000 hours of experience being required to be an expert. Well, that's only one of the requirements, right? 10,000 hours of experience does not automatically make you an expert. And I think the best example of this would be when I was doing maintenance. I have 8 years, well, just so almost 10 years I spent doing maintenance and custodian work and all that. So just all the general handyman stuff. And still, I would, even when I was pretty young I'd go and there'd be guys that were doing this stuff for 20, 30 years, and they'd be like, oh, well, this is just the way I've always done it. And it's like, okay, well, we've got power tools now, you old geezer type shit. And it's not always that bad. But my point with that is there's some, a, a subset of people out there, uh, fools, really. They're a type of fool. There's many types of fools. One of the first things that my therapist said to me back when I was going to see him, that was years ago now too. But one of the first things he said to me was, "You don't suffer fools easily." And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. I can I can be incredibly patient with people who are ignorant, but not people who are foolish. And ignorance means merely a lack of knowledge or expertise, right? Uh, People who are foolish and incompetent, I have, that's one of the few things that gets me really frustrated, especially when those people have positions of power. Uh, especially leadership positions. So I'm kind of spiraling on this first reason, right? I'm gonna lose people here. The first reason why that whole mentality of no king, well, this is all two reasons of why we need to live in a community. And I'm not even talking about us being social animals. That is us wanting to live in a community, whether we acknowledge it or not. Because even many of the asocial people who form these asocial or even antisocial groups, that's still a community. It's just an anti-community community in a weird way, you know? Uh, so that's its own thing. That's us wanting to form communities. There's a whole underlying want, which some would argue is a need, but I'm saying actual, verifiable, hardcore, scientific needs. You don't need to socialize with people. While you could argue it's a need because it's good for your mental health, the vast majority of us aren't going to die if we can't socialize with someone. The vast majority of us are going to die, though, if the furnace breaks down in the winter and we don't know how to fix it, right? So, which that happened to me this winter. I had my furnace break down during the winter, and I went to try and fix it, and I couldn't figure it out, even with my history of experience. So I went and I called an HVAC guy. Even with, like, we used to do a little bit of stuff with furnaces back when I worked for the apartment complex, but it was mostly just basic maintenance, changing filters and making sure the power got to them correctly and turning everything on. So I went through my basic little troubleshooting thing. I quickly was like, all right, this is beyond my expertise. I'm out of my depth here. Let's call someone. The guy made me feel kind of dumb at first because he showed up, replaced the fuse that I hadn't noticed because it was like weird. This system was the way the system was wired that I was unfamiliar with, and I was like, "Is that it?" I called this guy to replace one fuse, and I felt like kind of like a foolish idiot myself there. And then they went and they turned the power back on, and it immediately blew the new fuse out. So we had to replace the whole system, and then I was like, "Oh, thank God I called someone," you know? So the first reason we need communities is because you can't be an expert in all things. It's just impossible. Even if you live a very simple and straightforward life, unless you are the mountain man that does nothing but hone the skills necessary for survival and are a pure survivalist, then you're going to need other people in your life to like make you shoes or repair a roof for you, all these other things. We need a community. The second reason we need a community is for defense, right? No matter how big and powerful and strong you are, first of all, there's almost always going to be someone you'll meet who's bigger and stronger. But secondly, even if you are the strongest man in the world, you cannot compete against 8 billion other people aligned against you, right? Even against 8 people, you're going to have a hard time unless you're Hercules himself. So, it's absolutely necessary for defense that we have some kind of community. And this second reason is specifically why anarchy doesn't work, right? Because the thing about anarchy, don't get me wrong, when I was very young, I went through a slight pro anarchy phase. I wasn't like ever a full anarchist because I realized there needs to be some kind of framework. But I understand the arguments for anarchy, but that's exactly why I know it doesn't work. The same thing goes with communism and socialism. I was pro socialist in like 11th grade, 10th grade, I think it was. But then I started applying those concepts to real life. I was like, oh no, that's actually a terrible fucking idea. It's a fantasy ideology, is what it is. Purely fantasy. It just doesn't work in reality. If you look at it, any communist nation ends up being one of the worst nations in the world. Like, look at what Venezuela is going through right now. People talk about all the terrible things Hitler did, but most of those people that point that out don't realize that Stalin's body count is way higher. And the primary reason why communism doesn't work is because it forces equity while ignoring inequality, and that creates unfairness. And people can obviously see when something is unfair, and they're going to rebel or speak up against it. So because communism creates by its nature systemic unfairness, people are inevitably going to rebel against it. And the only way to maintain a communist society is to imprison or kill the rebels, which is why communist countries always have the highest body counts. Not saying that fascism is any better. It's equally as bad, right? But people that try and claim that communism and socialism are good are either evil themselves and just lying to you, or foolish and incompetent. So, why do we need kings then? And we're talking philosophically here, not necessarily a political system that is a monarchy, but a true king. And it's important to say that most people get the idea of a king wrong, right? So many of those people that you walking around that call themselves a king are much more suited to be a jester, right? They are the court fool in my eyes. I think I don't know if he's actually used this term, but I wouldn't believe. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has. Charlie is just begging for attention. I don't know what he wants right now. Like, I fed it him earlier when he was outside. He doesn't know that. Maybe that's what he's begging for right now. But he is whining all to hell. If I let him out, he'll stop whining because it's still distracting me. Yeah, just chill, cat. All right. So I don't know if he's ever said this in any of his content. I don't watch their content. I've got two examples I want to use right now. They're kind of the same person to me. Wes Watson and Andrew Tate. These are the type of people that, whether or not they actually use the term, like to present themselves as kings, but are really just spoiled brats, you know? And it becomes obvious anytime anything doesn't go their way. You know, they just start complaining and whining when a real king just gets quiet and figures that shit out. But they do the opposite. They get loud and expect someone else to solve it for them. Andrew Tate begging for attention from Donald Trump was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. So here's the thing. You have these fake kings and queens that talk about king energy and queen energy. They don't even know what that means, right? In reality, it's exactly the opposite of the type of energy they put out into the world. What they're actually putting out is spoiled prince and princess energy, the type of person that if he has an option, a king would absolutely pass them over and have someone else succeed him, right? Just because you look at this guy and it's like, man, what an insufferable piece of shit who only cares about himself. He's going to be terrible for the community. And I think that's the biggest reason why we have, maybe not the biggest reason, I think the biggest reason is a lack of proper parenting. But it's important to note that even when you have good parents, sometimes you have a bad apple, right? You get these bullshit, petty princes and princesses that don't grow up, regardless of how well the parents raised them, just because sometimes people got demons and you can't fight anyone else's demons for them, right? I don't know why some kids go bad even when they have great parents, right? You can have 5 kids and all of them turn out fine, great even, and then the fifth one's just a holy terror. I think that's just evil doing its work within the universe, you know? But the big problem comes when you let these false queens and kings, these incompetent fools that don't understand anything about leadership, have this outsized amount of power, because all they do is take from the community without ever really giving anything back. And you can see it in these crypto scams and offering these courses that are absolutely empty and don't tell you anything you couldn't find just by Googling, yet they still want to charge you like $2,000 a month. It's absolutely insane. So these are the very people that run around saying no kings, no, because they just want to be in charge themselves. Now, some of them, it's they just want to be in charge of their own life and not have anyone else tell them what to do. And I can absolutely relate to that. But there are some limits on personal freedom. And I would say the limits on personal freedom are when your actions start impeding on someone else's freedom, right? And we could have a whole philosophical debate about where that line is, but let's just use that as a general statement for now and save that, the rest of that, for another conversation. The big thing with all of this, though, is that none of those people actually understand what it means to be a king. Anyone that would use the hashtag no kings except ironically, because I might use it on this post just because. Uh, Anyone that would use the hashtag no kings tag unironically has no fucking brain. Because clearly we need kings and queens because most people are just goddamn idiots that barely even know how to order their own lives. And if you don't believe that, look at gotcha games and look at the people who play them. And I don't mean all people, right? But look at the way these people's lives are spiraling. And instead of getting their life together, they drop $500 in this gotcha game to get some big titty waifu that has absolutely no real value. So, like, instead of fixing something wrong with their car or house, or maybe starting a small business, they just throw hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of dollars into these gotcha games. And this is just one example. I really see gotcha games as a subset of gambling. I'd say so. That's what I'm really going after is gamblers, not just gotcha games specifically. Let's chill on the gotcha game, hey, right? Gamblers. They just throw endless amounts of money into this black hole, and yet somehow they think the world would be better if they were in charge when they don't realize that they don't even have control over their own life, over their own spending habits. How are you going to manage the finances of an entire city or county or country if you can't even manage your own finances? And we've seen a perfect example of Tiffany Hayward, I believe is her name. If you don't know who that is, Google her. She's the super mayor, quote unquote. Super corrupt. She basically bankrupted the city, buying herself a bunch of luxury trips and stuff like that. And it's absolutely insane that someone like this even was allowed to run for office in the first place, let alone won, and let alone had so many supporters. And it doesn't look like the guy that replaced her is any better, but we'll wait and see on that. So you keep putting these false kings and queens in charge just because they say they're a king or a queen, but they don't act like it. Y'all need to learn to start paying attention more to how people act and less about what they say. And this is a whole thing on its own. But if you really want to know what a true king looks like, it's exactly the opposite of Andrew Tate. Exactly the opposite of all of these politicians, I would say. The only two politicians I would say I've seen in my lifetime that showed real king or queen energy were Ron Paul and I forget her first name. It's either Jill or Joe Jorgensen. Those people really understand that if you're going to be a leader, a true king or queen, you need to put the people first, right? There is a hierarchy of needs, and when you become a leader, especially the leader of a community, then the needs of the community comes before anything you personally want. But people seem to have this false concept of a king where they think, oh, I'm the king, I'm the queen, I get to do whatever I want. No, it's exactly the opposite. Once you become the king or the queen, you have no free will anymore. If you really want to be the king or the queen, you need to give up your free will because it gets replaced by the needs of the community, right? You become the ultimate servant. Many people see the king or the queen as the highest person in a society, but in reality, they're actually the lowest. They are the one person in the entire society that has a duty to serve every other person in that society. So, this is my warning to you because I've seen so many times that the number one thing that causes the collapse of a society is a failure of leadership. Stop supporting people that don't serve you. If they don't serve you, if they serve themselves or expect you to serve them, then it's blaringly obvious to me, and hopefully you guys can start seeing this soon. They are no king or no queen. They are a snake, a fool, a jester that is making a joke out of that society. In other words, stop making stupid people famous. Cheers. Like, subscribe, comment. I love all of you, and God bless.